Well, hello and welcome to Thrive Like a Parent podcast. I am so excited to discuss with you today parenting in widowhood and what that is like. And not only am I going to talk to you about that today, I'm here with Emily Toledo. And not only is she a widow sister of mine, but she also is a mentor for all the other women who come through our Thrive doors and supports all of the women. And the reason is because not only did she start out and thrive and want to do this for herself, but she showed so much emotion for all the other women and what they go through individually in their life, not just being a widow, but having other circumstances of either being a divorced parent or having tons of different outlooks on life. And she now has moved through the process of supporting all of our other women. So I would love to introduce you to Emily. And Emily, we're so excited to have you. And I'm so excited to have this conversation. And so many have wanted to pick my brain of what this is like to be a widow. And I wanted to do this with you and discuss your own story as well as mine and be able to share what this has been like for both of us. And as we were just discussing before hitting record, that all of our journeys are completely different, whether you're a single parent or a solo parent or you've got multiple parents because there's remarriage and this and that. Like there's just so many different ways about how we parent our children, and all of our experiences matter, every single one of them, and they're all different for each one of us. So with that, I would love for you to share a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself to all of our wonderful listeners and share kind of anything that comes up for you. I'd love for you to just say a little bit about your own journey of how you've gotten to this place of widowhood and all the things. So, yeah, welcome.
Sure. I'm excited to be here and share my story with you. So let's get started. So I currently have three little kids. So I have an 8-year-old daughter, a 5-year-old daughter, and a going to be 3-year-old in December. So it's a lot, that's for sure. But if I can just back up for a little bit of where I've been previously. So I met my late husband, Brian, when I was 18, and we got married young for today's standards, right? At 23. I think I turned 23 2 weeks before we got married. Then we had our first when I was 26, second when I was 29, and third when I was 32. And we had a normal marriage like most people have, right? You have, especially with 3 kids, it becomes this roommate kind of thing that happens over time because you're just inundated with everybody else's needs and in survival mode. I was definitely in survival mode and just trying to keep things afloat. Tack onto that, I had my third in December of 2019. So shortly after that, COVID hit, and it in March. And so I still was trying to process having 3 kids and being outnumbered, and taking care of 3 kids like by myself, basically, while Brian was in the master closet working from home. I'm trying to get my kindergartner on Zoom, and we're not trying to have a nip slip for her class, getting my newborn. And also juggling these postpartum like depression, going through that because I wasn't able to have help. We're trying to keep everyone safe. And then in July of 2020, our whole like future as we knew it as a family was just up in flames. Brian died suddenly. We didn't see it coming at all, of an unknown heart condition. We didn't know that he had a heart condition, but one day he came home from work, and about 15 minutes later, he was pretty much gone. And so I'm here today. That happened over 2 years ago in 2020, and trying to figure out, right, how to do this. just on my own as a solo parent. And I never would have imagined having to do this. Never would have wanted to do this, but here I am, and I'm here. Like, you can survive this.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for sharing. I know that sharing your particular story, especially with how sudden it happened, and like you said, him coming home and then within 15 minutes, that's not an easy experience to live through for yourself and your children. And it's very powerful for you to be able to share that with so many and so openly. So I really, really appreciate you sharing that. And I would say, while I still haven't fully expressed my entire story and shared exactly what happened, but while Jonathan's passing was extremely sudden and extremely traumatic, um, he was sick for a very, very, very long time emotionally. And I always had that internal feeling of this could happen, but to have no awareness and this completely out of the blue is completely blindsiding for you and completely sidetracking for your life.
Absolutely.
Um, I would love to know a little bit from you, if you don't mind answering. Just kind of like a blunt question is, how does it feel to talk about this? How does it feel to talk about Ryan and that loss? Is it hard? Is it easy? Is it cathartic? Like, how does it feel to open up about all of this?
Talking about the actual event that occurred is hard.
Mhm.
Absolutely. It's not something I like to remember. I don't like remembering him by that by any means. So that absolutely is hard, and something that I try to kind of not rid my mind of, but kind of. But talking about him, talking
Mhm.
about who he was, the memories that we have with him, I love doing that
Yeah.
because it comes from the movie Coco, but it's so true. A person dies twice. So they
Mm.
die physically, and then they die when you stop talking about them.
Yeah.
And it's up to us as people here on earth to keep them alive
Mhm.
by sharing memories. And that's not only me sharing memories, that's people sharing memories with me that I don't even know about. I love hearing about that. My kids need that. We all need that. So um, I don't want to let him die twice. So I
I
want
love
to
that.
continue talking about him.
That's amazing. I love that. And it's very true. You know, we can continue discussing our late husbands to our children and still have that spirit within our homes. Absolutely. And, you know, it hasn't been an easy road, right? Here you are in the midst of, how old was your youngest?
She was 6 months old.
Okay. So 6 months old and still in the midst of COVID, right?
Mhm.
And navigating all of this. How has it been to navigate stepping into having a partnership and then in the blink of an eye trying to navigate this world? How has that been for you?
I mean, so
Hmm.
tough. I didn't live an adult life without Brian by my side.
Mhm.
Like, I was 18 when I met him, so he was always there for me. And I hadn't by that time even found myself, right?
Mhm.
Because I was so young. And I remember even telling him, like, I don't sometimes know who I am. So even then, like, he knew that about me. And so it's been a challenge trying to figure out who I am without the identity of being a wife, without the identity of a partnership, or feeling that safety that he brought to my life, even though safety is not necessarily a real thing,
Mhm.
but he did bring that sense of safety in my life. And that's been, and I know for my children as well. So that it's definitely been a challenge.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I I very much agree with you. It has been a challenge to, I would say for me, the hardest part has been to navigate all the things that Jonathan used to do. Like, I mean, a few months ago, I was out and there's like a whole, like huge asshole in the sprinkler out there. And I was like cursing and like, I was like, God, damn it. Like, I was just so effing pissed. Like, I was so pissed. And it was a moment where I was like, I have to do all this on my own. I have no idea how to do this. And like this is something Jonathan would do. And like, I don't understand. Like, why do I have to do this all on my own? And like, there's just these moments of like, I mean, Jonathan took the trash out and, no joke, Jonathan fed the dogs. And so there's still things that happen in my life on a day-to-day basis where I'm like, oh, I didn't feed the dogs today because that's what Jonathan would have done. And trying to navigate all the different parts of pieces that we used to have, right, as a dual partnership of someone there to manage and do some of half of any of the different quirks or things that are on the list for the day. I would say for me that's been hands down the hardest thing of like, I don't know, changing the light bulbs and like making sure that Jonathan did the taxes. Like, I don't know how to do that. Like, now I do, but like that has been hands down the hardest thing for me is recouping and stepping into doing it all and having enough emotional time and space and energy to be able to do it all.
The spiders for me.
The spiders? What do you
Yes.
mean? Tell me more.
Just so I would get this shrill and say, Brian, like this. He knew exactly when there was a spider in the house. And he'd be like, what is it? I know it's a bug. So he would come and kill the spiders for me because I don't do spiders. Guess what? I have to kill those spiders now. And it's empowering. Now I know how to kill spiders. And I know that's a little simple thing, but even that, I'm like, okay, like I can do this. And he did a lot of other things. Don't get me wrong. But I remember the first time I was like, no, I've got to do this. I've got to protect my family and kill this spider. So
I freaking love that you said that it's empowering because I will never forget, like we were for sure in the middle of COVID and the bike, like the chain kept falling off. And I was like, I'm going to freaking figure this. Like, I'm going to do this. Like Jonathan would have done this in 3, like, I'm going to do it. Like, I'm going to do it. So I literally worked at it for an hour and a half one day. And I was so angry and I gave up and I was like, no, I'm going to do this. And then I tried again. Lo and behold, I looked on YouTube. There was like a 3rd grader who was like, I'll show you how to do this in time. And I was like, okay, if this 6-year-old can do this, like I can do this. And I even filmed it. And like, when I did it, it was so empowering. It was like, holy shit, I freaking did this. Like I did this. Like I now know how to put a bike chain back to it. Like I did this. And while frankly, I got someone else to do the sprinkler stuff, but like, yeah, it's the spiders and all the things that we didn't even recognize, or I would say frankly, take for granted. Like I didn't recognize all the pressures of being the primary, not caregiver, that was me, but the primary financial provider. And
absolutely,
like, I now understand so much more. And when we do those things, it's like, damn right, I did that. Like, wow, like, holy shit, I am capable.
Absolutely. It's a great feeling. It sucks that it took this to have that feeling, but yes, it's definitely, I feel so empowered. A lot of times.
Yeah, for sure. When I was asking our audience on Instagram, I was like, what would you guys like to know about? And how would you like to pick our brains based on this topic of moms in widowhood? What would you want to know? And one of the questions they asked are you open with your kids about your grief and you're struggling alone as a parent? Like, do you share that with your children, and how do you handle that?
For me, there's been definitely an evolution to that. In the beginning, I mean, I was just in denial, devastated, still devastated, but just in that deep, deep grief. And I could barely take care of themselves or of them. I couldn't even take
Right.
care of myself, right?
Hmm.
So I had to lean on my parents a lot in those times. And I would, I remember taking my kids to school in the morning and just being like, okay, I have 2 minutes. I have 2 minutes. Shut my door, bawling. And then I'd be like, oh, time to cry is done. Wipe my tears, go take my kids to school. Like that's the time I had to grieve. Right. And, but part of me joining your program was because I knew I needed to do better for my kids to show them that emotions are okay. It's okay to feel sad. And I model that for them. I get to
Hmm.
be the model to be like, no, it's okay. Anger's okay in grief.
Hmm.
Sadness is okay in grief. Um, just feeling like not recognizing your life, but also happiness is okay. So
Hmm.
the duality of different emotions is also something that I learned and something that I teach my kids as well.
Hmm.
Now I'm more open when I have a hard day. I tell them, hey guys, I'm having a really tough time today, and let them know how they can best support me in that day. Um, and I request the same of them. Let me know if you're having a hard time. Let me know how I can support you. Them seeing me cry, them seeing me struggle is kind of an okay and permission for them to do the same. And you can build such beautiful relationships with your kids when you are honest, when you do have those conversations. Now, it might take some like pulling from some of them, right? My oldest, I know, and I know your oldest also, it takes a lot sometimes to tap into their emotions, but I see it little by little. And I see just the things they say sometimes are amazing and well beyond their years. And so supportive, like words of support, like, mommy, I know it's hard and you're doing the best. Like, I know you're doing the best you can. And I just yelled at them or something, like unconditional love from children. Uh, there's nothing better than that.
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
absolutely. I would definitely say, even though I created and built this model and was working with parents prior to Jonathan passing, and of course, I've said many times that I built this based on what I knew about the brain as well as what I needed in my own home and what I needed to learn and my children needed to learn to emotionally and sensory regulate their bodies. But damn, was I grateful when we had that, because you have no effing idea how to, you're like you said, like you want to stay in bed. Like there is no hall pass for grief. Like there's no, oh, I'm going to go on vacation now. See you kids in a few months. Like there's none of that. Like we still have to get out of bed and bring them to school. There is not a hall pass. And to be able to step into looking at our children being like, hi, I feel sad today, or just crying in front of them or saying, I just feel frustrated or I feel angry. And I share this with all of the Thrive moms, is like the first time that I finally just like showed my children what it meant to be in the blue and feel sad and just cry it out. I will never forget that moment for the rest of my life, because my children were like, oh, what's going on with you? And I was like, mommy just feels sad. And the love, like you're saying, and compassion that came out of it was hugs and support and love. And they're learning that because we do that to them like constantly. All we do is support our children all day long through everything. And to allow them to not only learn what it feels like to get that love and support, but also learn how to give it back in return is, I mean, it's been healing and a connection that I have with the boys that, of course, I wish Jonathan was here, but it's a different connection that I've never felt with them. And your brain has to be able to feel those things. If we hide them, and so often we do, and we have tons and tons of clients who are like, I just, I'm hiding in the bathroom crying today. And it's like, just allow it, like let it out and show your children how to truly feel emotions. So many of us, I find, came from families that just put on a happy face and kind of faked it, or it's like a costume, right? Of like, hey, how you doing? And that doesn't work when shit hits the fan and you're in the midst of grief. It just doesn't. And in order to be able to move through it and allow it and accept it, you've got to feel it. Like you have to. And you cannot hide that from your kids. Like there's just no way, because this level of grief just takes over your brain and body like completely. And you do the best you can. And like you said, I do feel that they learn that compassion and love from seeing that model of knowing it's okay to have those emotions and feelings, and knowing it's okay to feel the hard stuff. Absolutely. I would love for you to share what has been your greatest tool for you in terms of parenting logically and emotionally, and just all that. Like, how have you been able to parent through the grief? Like, what was your greatest tool for you?
I think honestly, what we were just talking about is
Mhm,
just modeling that emotions are okay. Even
mhm,
anger. Anger is an emotion that a lot of us don't like to talk about. It's an emotion that we're scared of and it's seen as bad, but it's a natural emotion that we have. And I think it's an emotion that comes with grief a lot. I've spoken to many of my widow sisters and we've talked about anger, and our kids have that too. And it's
mhm,
hard to see it in our kids,
mhm,
but
mhm,
they're emotional beings just like us. If we're angry about this, they're angry about this. If we're sad, they're sad. They might show it in completely different ways. It might not even come out as tears. It might come out as anger. A lot of times I've seen with my kids, their grief comes out in anger in other ways. And that's really, really hard for us as parents to see. So trying to support that and have conversations and not shame them for that anger, but try to deal with it in alternative ways, not hitting people, not being violent, things like that, but knowing that, okay, it's okay that you feel angry. I feel angry sometimes. Just getting on their level of saying, yes, I feel those emotions too.
mhm,
Because I think they need to know that they're not alone. And
mhm,
all of us need to know that we're not alone, right? And
mhm,
I think the community that Thrive has is so many parents talk about the things that they don't actually talk about in their circles in life because they're ashamed, they feel guilty, all of these things. And this opens up their world to other people who are being authentic and able to share. And they're like, oh, okay, like I'm not in this alone. Like this is how most people feel. We just don't talk about it. And community with anybody is everything. Moms, we need to be more authentic. We need to find community. If you're a widowed mom, a single mom, divorced mom, find people that share some of your commonalities that you can build relationships with. Our kids that, as widowed parents, try if you can to find other kids who also have lost a parent, because our kids need that community as well, and to know that they're not alone and they aren't the only children who have lost a parent.
mhm. Yeah, I 1,000% agree with you. I think that despite our fear of anger, it's there. Like, despite that emotion, no matter what's going on in your life, like, it's just simply an emotion. And whether you express it and state it, and in one of the earlier podcasts, I said, like, explained how to regulate, right, your emotions and sensory system. And the first one is, how do you feel, right? I feel, I statements. And anger is going to come out. So it's either going to come out in us snapping at our kids, or it's going to come out in us in our tone of voice, or it's going to come out in other ways of just frustration and go to bed, or like whatever it is. Right. And so the beautiful part is that if you can acknowledge it and say it, your children know that you're not angry at them. I am having a hard day. I feel frustrated. I feel angry, right? I always follow that up with, I love you both. It has nothing to do with you. I'm just having a hard day, or I just feel angry today. And that way, my kids know, like, it has nothing to do with them, right? As opposed to just me lashing out and screaming and this and that. They'll be like, oh gosh, mommy must be angry at me. Like, what the heck is going on? You don't know how they're processing that and what stories they're telling themselves. But in order to show up right with the logic and emotion brain and be able to do this, we have to be able to just state where we're at. We have to be able to show up for ourselves. And that's showing our children that it's okay for them to do the same. And yeah, they are going to figure it out through physical means in the beginning when they're younger and test it and
Mhm.
try it on and use different things. It's testing, it's trying, it's how does this feel on my body? But then we get to have the hard conversations with them of like, it is more than okay to have that anger. Like it's more than okay. But
Mhm.
let's put your pillow and stand over your brother, right? Like it's
Exactly.
more, yeah, it's okay. Um, Another one of the questions we got was, how's the best way to support us? Like, I think that death is people just kind of like, I don't know what to do. Do I call? Do I text? Do I write? Do I this? Do I that? Do I leave him alone? Do I do that? Like, and it is a lot of questions that people want to know of like, how can I support you? And I know that it's different. So I would love for you to share what that felt like for you and what you feel people could take away from being like, got it. I now have some guidance of how it's best to support struggling individuals.
Sure. And obviously, each of us needs support in different ways, right? What works for one person might not work for another. And in my case, I feel like I was kind of at a disadvantage having the COVID thing
Mhm.
happen. So people weren't sending, and also I moved in with my parents. So people weren't sending meals. People weren't doing things with my kids. Like it was just a whole different thing. I just had basically our immediate families, my in-laws and my parents supporting us, and they were going through grief at the same time. So it was really hard.
Mhm.
Like they had to worry about the cooking still, and they had to do this when people should have probably been supporting all of them too. But so what you can do, some of the things I think that people can do is don't ask what a widow needs. That is another to do
Mhm.
for someone that has already so many. The list has gotten bigger for us once our spouse has died, because our spouse has contributed to the house as well. So don't give them any other to dos. If you want to do something for them, do it. So say,
Mhm.
I'm bringing dinner over on Thursday. Don't even ask what they want. If you need a third party, like a sister or something, call them and say, what do they like? Don't even ask the widow. Like it's appreciated for sure, but it adds more stress to be asking, oh, and what do you want? Because we probably don't know what we want. We just might not even be hungry, honestly, but our kids need to eat. Um, Take the kids. Oh my gosh. Like if you want to take the kids from us for a
Take it.
day, take them to lunch, take them to the park. Like,
The
oh
answer
my
is yes.
gosh. Yes, and asking for it is really hard. So if you want to volunteer, like, I was thinking of taking the kids to lunch or taking them to the park, I will probably say yes, because
Mhm.
the truth is that all of us need a break, whether you have a partnership or you are a working mom, a stay-at-home mom, a solo parent, a single parent, like everyone needs a break. So honestly, that's advice for anyone. Like
Mhm.
if you see someone struggling, a parent struggling, take their kids from them for a little bit.
Mm.
It only makes us better and allows us to show up for our kids better. And as a grieving parent, you can have that time to just have to yourself. And if you want to be in bed or whatever else you need to get done, get done.
Mhm. Mhm.
If you are bringing a meal to a widow, make sure that it's in a disposable container. because you don't want to give them like a casserole dish that they are responsible to wash and then remember who gave it to them to give it back. That's another to do, but a simple thing, right? To kind of remember. It's little, but it makes a
It's
difference.
true. Yeah.
And always just, even if they say no, keep inviting them to
Yeah.
things. I know I've said no a lot of times, but the people that still invite me to things, it's so important. Because you know what, sometimes I just don't have the, like, I want to see you, but I just can't muster up the energy at the end of the day to go do something or whatever it may be, or come to their house. And sometimes that's better than going out somewhere, going to their house in their own place where the kids can still be there and just having a chat, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell them they're doing a good job.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Like positive reinforcement, because when you're with kids all day, you don't get a lot of, on the bad days, you don't get this positive reinforcement. It's like, oh, I didn't like the carrots that were with my dinner. Oh, I didn't like this, or all like it's complain. Some days it's just complaining and you're like, oh my gosh, like, can
Yep.
someone just throw me a freaking bone here? Or can I be like released from this situation? Like,
Yep.
you just need that positive reinforcement too sometimes.
Yeah, I would agree with all of those. I think for me, um, the biggest thing was there's so much that came at me right in the beginning. And in my true fashion of knowing what was right and wrong, I felt the pressure to thank people, reach out to people and like text them, yes, I got the flowers. Yes, I got this. Yes, I got that. And to be completely like blunt, I did not have time for that shit. Like, I love you. Thank you so much for sending all of that. This is my formal thank you right now. But like, I cannot tell you how little I saw in terms of like vision. Like, I saw it all, but my brain wasn't there at the same time. Like, I was absolutely like surviving. And I know each and every one of you and what you sent. But in order for me to then be like, hey, thank you so much for the, edible bouquet, or like I couldn't do it. And I got text messages that were like, hey, just making sure you got it. And I was like, I did. I promise you I got it. And like, I'm so sorry. That may be so rude, but like, I can't be apologizing in a time where I have nothing to give myself. Like, I had nothing to give anyone. And I would say that was super hard. And of course, it feels like it's all coming at you at once. And there's tons of like asks, like tons and tons of asks right in the beginning. And like people, almost like when you have a new baby, it's like people want to come see you. Like, people wanted to come see me. And yes, it was still during COVID. And like, I was like, oh my God, like I can't, like, thank you so much for the offer. Thank you so much for coming. But like, I don't feel like drumming up a conversation right now. Like, if you want to help, like, I would love for you to like do a play date with the kids, like, and allow me some time to grieve, because what you don't realize is that we have to be on 24/7. Like, after your kids don't like the damn carrots that you've cooked, you still need to do the dishes and put them away, and also make the lunches for the next day. And then finish the laundry while they're heading up to make sure that they don't drown in the bathtub. And then we got to make sure that they brush their teeth, put their clothes on into bed. Like, every step of the way, there is not one morsel of support behind you to show up and guide this system of like rendering your children and raising them, when you did have that help, you did have that support, you did have those bits and pieces where you could tag in and tag out. And I would say the number one thing that I would recommend is, like you said, like, don't ask, just do. Hands down, do that. But like, don't be afraid to call. Don't be afraid to text. Don't be afraid to write. Don't be afraid to send the edible bouquet. Like, we see it. We love you for it. We will always remember it and we know it. And so often we're like, oh, yeah, I didn't want to bother you. Like, and it's like, I I noticed the ones who I was like, there were a few, but I was like, huh, like, I like, hey, like, haven't heard from you in a while. Yeah, I heard. Like, oh, okay. Like, don't be afraid, because we will see the missed call. We will see the we will see it, right? And I would say the most important is to keep going. Like if you get rejected and we're like, sorry, I can't, sorry, I can't, sorry, I can't, like months down the road, maybe we will be able to say, I can. And years
Right.
down the road, maybe we'll be able to say, thank you so much for continuing to show up and continuing to put yourself out there and have the ask. I know that's putting more on all of you all of like, you've got enough going on your own. But if you do want to feel or be that for someone, and you've made that active choice, just know that there's not much in return that we can give you at the moment. But yet at the same time, we will remember it for the rest of our lives.
Absolutely. I totally agree with all of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And one thing, this is actually the number one thing that I didn't mention is listen.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, I think, and it's so, so hard to find someone that will just sit there with you and listen, like word vomit or like just a shoulder to cry on, right? Many people, just like in motherhood, just try to fix, like, it's all going to be okay. It's all like, well, it's not right now. Or like, or,
Mm-hmm.
and don't say like, this sucks. Like,
Mm-hmm.
aren't just validating that this sucks. Like, it really sucks. And when you're in this early grief, you don't want to know, like you're not seeing anything past what's going on right then and there, and you are just in the thick of it, and you cannot see any sort of light at the end of the tunnel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, this is kind of a form of a question, but I also know, you very well in your story. But do you feel like there's no other way to ask this, so I'm just going to ask it, but do you feel like there's men that have stepped up in your kiddos' lives, like either friends of Brian or family? Like, do you feel that, or even like coaches or things like that? Have you felt that support in community or have you felt that for yourself, for your kids?
Yes, I do feel like people have stepped up. I think definitely I think it's really important anyways for men to have that male energy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not something I can personally provide. Um, I can try to be more fun, although Brian did call me a fun mom. So I guess I was still fun, but I can't do that. It can't be replaced. And I can't have another to do on my list. I have to be realistic in that that's not mine to take on. So there have been men in our lives who have done that. So my dad, Brian's dad, I have a brother-in-law who is local. He took my son out to practice baseball before he started baseball. And I've had to have tough conversations with coaches and teachers, I tell them right off the bat, when
Mm-hmm.
we start, I say, hey, I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you this so that you can support my kid in the best way possible. And I tell them that their dad passed, and that, like, for coaches, for example, I had told there were 3 male coaches for my son's baseball team. I said, you guys mean more to me and more to my son than you know,
Mm-hmm.
because he's looking at you guys as a male figure. And I really, really appreciate all that you do. And they had tears in their eyes, and they're like, we are going to do everything we can to support him. And he probably got like special treatment
Mm-hmm.
on the
Mm-hmm.
team, but he
That's
loved
okay.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was
Mm-hmm.
great. And they were so supportive with him. And he just, it was great. And then with teachers, I've had the same thing. They may not be, most of their teachers are not male, but I do always have that conversation with their teachers first so that they know, hey, sometimes my kids talk about this. Sometimes my kids might be more sad in class. And it's all been, everybody's thanked me for telling them, because they
Yeah.
don't want to find that out just out of the blue.
Yeah. Absolutely. That got me a little emotional. I know that your family, you live close to Brian's family and you moved in with your parents. And so that support has been like so incredible for you. And I've talked to you individually of that quite wasn't there for me. And it still isn't. And um, I didn't know that it was important until I knew. There are so many different styles of partnerships, and you can have two mommies, you can have two daddies, you can have one daddy, you can have one mom. Like there's so many different forms of partnerships nowadays that it's like probably the part of me that was like, damn right, we can do this. Like I got this. It was like, no, I can be like I am everything. There's no other option. Like I can do it all. And um probably within this second year, early in the second year, I really recognized like, wow, like they're missing some male energy, just like, and it doesn't have to be through a partnership. It can be through a grandparent or a this or that. Like it can be through or a coach. Like it can be through anything. And my children do have two wonderful men in their life who have one is my nanny's husband. He has stepped up from the moment, Jonathan passed, and I'm so grateful to him. And my children will always have him. And there's just a different energy that I feel that my children were missing and needing. And I love that you brought up teachers too, because that was actually one of the questions. It was like, how can we support your children? Like, please help us understand that. And I as well, first and foremost, go up to them and I share, like, I just need you to know this happened. Like, I just need you to know in case they talk about it and all of the things. And I think the last question that we should kind of move into an answer is, and I have my opinions on this, but I would love for you to share as well, is like, how do you feel that friends, family, teachers, coaches, how do you feel they can support your children best? Like, what would be the takeaway of like, let's say they bring it up, or like, how do you feel that they can support our children when it might honestly feel awkward for them of like, oh, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm like, even like a dad, like, it's like, you're at a play date and like, yeah, I know you don't have one, but like, like, what would you say to anyone listening of like how to support our children?
So I think our kids just want to be normal. I think our kids know that there's something different about them. They
Yep.
know that,
Mm-hmm.
but they want to be normal. So you can have kids, sometimes they will take advantage of the fact that they're getting special treatment because their dad died, and they will use it as manipulation in some ways. But from teachers, I think it's just recognizing that things are going to look different. Their sadness, their demeanor on some days might be different. When you're doing like the Father's Day projects or
Mm-hmm.
Mother's Day projects, if it was the loss of a wife,
Mm-hmm.
I've had teachers email me, how do you want us to handle this? And I really appreciate them just reaching out to me. And what I say is, however my kid would like to handle it. If they want to make something for their grandfather, an uncle, or anyone else, they can do that. But I don't also want them to feel like they can't participate.
Mm-hmm.
They can even make something for their dad still. So I just appreciate open communication
Mm-hmm.
from teachers and from coaches or anything like that. It's really important. And let them talk about it. If it comes up and they tell, sometimes these kids, they're like holding this in just like us. And I know I've had in some instances, should I just say it? Should I just say that I'm a widow? Should I say this?
Right.
The kids are doing the same thing of like, should I
Totally.
say that my dad's
Like just
dead?
rip the band-aid off, rip it off.
And yes, they do. They'll blurt it out just randomly.
Yep.
And it's heartbreaking. But having those conversations beforehand so no one's caught off guard, and they're supported in
Mm-hmm.
in talking, and it's not like this like taboo thing, like shh, you need to be quiet about it. No, it's a normal part of life. And my kids, your kids, had their innocence ripped out from them at such early ages, and they should be allowed to talk about that. Like, I know it's scary for some other people, but like, imagine being here as a child or as an adult and feeling so isolated that you can't talk about something that's huge, that's so heavy on your heart. Like, we should all just normalize grief a little bit more, because we all have that in common. We are all going to die one day. We will all lose someone special to us one day. And if we don't talk about it, it makes it that much harder for those who are going through it, because no one knows what to do. No one knows how to support each other. And support does look a lot different from other people. Some people will just literally just turn their eye at it because they don't know what to do, or it scares them, or they think that if they're around you, something bad's going to happen to them. Like, it's really hard.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. And my children, especially Charlie, because he's older, has for sure blurted it out and been like, yeah, my dad died, or like, hi, like, nice meeting you. Yeah, my dad died. And I can tell the discomfort in Charlie when he's sharing that. We go to this sushi place where these awesome teenagers, boys, they all learn from, the owners and their son. And so we like going there and sitting at the sushi bar, and Charlie was like, yeah, because my dad died. Like, he wanted to say it. And the biggest piece of advice I can give you for anyone listening, and I hope, Emily, you agree with this, is like, instead of using the words, yeah, I'm so sorry, buddy, ask them, be like, how do you feel? Like, if they're choosing to tell you this information, that means they feel safe enough to share it with you. And if they feel safe enough to share it with you, allow them to continue. Ask curious questions of how do you feel? Yeah, I feel really sad. Thank you so much for sharing that. Like, allow them to know it is okay to talk about it, because they do feel different. Like, Charlie has shared that with me before. Like, everyone knows in my class that daddy died. I'm like, really? You think? And I don't know if they know. Like, I don't know. It could be just a story he's sharing and telling himself, and the difference that he feels within himself. But for anyone listening, like, if that has happened to a child that you're around, whether it's a male or a female, like, embrace that child and allow them to feel that love from whoever it's from. And of course, you're not going to replace that, but allow them to feel included and welcomed, and that it's okay to share, because the more they share, the more they can heal, for sure. And I know I said that was the last question, but I have one more for you.
That's totally fine.
Okay. What would you say has been, this is a really hard question, but what would you say is the best, worst thing that has come out of being a widow? Like, what would you say is like the thing that you're like proud of, or the thing that you're like, wow, like, I did that, like, how, and I know that's a hard question, but do you have any moments like of being a mom, right? Like,
yeah. So that's hard because, right, I would give anything to have my old life back. I would give anything to have Brian back. However, I know that's not possible.
Right.
And I know that I have to move forward, not only for myself, but for my kids. I modeled that as well. I modeled that there can be joy after grief. I'm still so like, what am I going to do? Just my kids doing something funny and I'm just sitting there and emotionless. Like, no, there's so much joy in life to still be had. And I know, and Brian and I actually were able to have certain conversations. I know that he would want us to still experience life to the fullest. And I owe that to him, because he's not here to be able to experience life. And I can't take for granted being able to watch these kids grow up, because that's something that I grieve for him that he's not able to do. And I forgot what the question was now.
Right. The best but worst thing about, like,
okay.
Of course we never wish this, but like, your takeaway of like that sense of pride, or like, what have you felt, even you've learned the most about yourself as becoming a widow?
Yeah. And that's been the hardest thing for me to figure out, the hardest thing for me to articulate. And I think just the hardest thing, because it feels at the beginning, it feels icky to be like,
Mhm,
I did that and I can do
mhm,
that by myself.
mhm,
And
mhm,
I feel empowered. I remember having a conversation with you
mhm,
about this. Um, I now am okay with my wins. Like I am doing this, on my own as a parent, and I know I'm capable of these things. My sense of confidence, even while being married to Brian, like he always said, I wish you were more confident, was like slim to none. And although I'm still not a super confident person, I have grown leaps and bounds in that way.
mhm.
There's been so much growth because I've needed to be. There's no one here to stick up
Right,
for me, right?
right.
And just taking that time for myself and asking for help and making sure that I regulate myself by, for me, that's running or strength training, things like that. That really came to fruition, or I really realized that when I was in the Thrive group. I
Mhm,
I hadn't been exercising since consistently since having kids, and now I make it a conscious effort 4 or 5 times a week.
mhm,
I'm running or doing some kind of strength training, and my kids join in with me,
mm,
um, and sometimes, and it's just been empowering to see that my mental health has gotten so much better
mhm.
when I regulate my body. When I'm working out, it's not because of the reasons that I did in high school. It's not
Yeah.
because I need my body to, like, my abs need to look this way and I need to look good for this person and blah, blah, blah. Not at all. Like, I'm doing it because I feel good when I'm doing it. I feel my brain feels good. I feel strong, and I have gotten physically stronger as well. But, and that's empowering in of itself. But it's just regulating my body and taking charge of who I am, finding myself again.
Right.
She's been missing for a while. Like the
Yeah.
old me was missing for a while. And now I'm not going to be the same person now than I was either, but
Right.
there's a lot of still, I enjoy the same things, and I
Mhm,
find myself singing again, exercising again, like making jokes, and it's feels good. Like it
mhm.
feels good to find myself again. And I hate that, obviously, what happened. But I think it's so important to show as an example to other widows, to as an example to my children. Like my biggest fear, honestly, in all this was Brian died. I didn't want me to die too for them.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Mhm.
part of me did die for a while, but like they don't deserve to have me die too. They deserve for me to be fully present and live my life. And I'm always going to have these bittersweet feelings of them growing up and wish that Brian was here to experience and have them have their dad to experience things with them. And I'm also able to provide this happy life for them and a beautiful life in different ways, and have different perspective on life and not take certain things for granted that I did before, and show
Yes.
up differently because I also recognize the things that I did that weren't so great,
Mhm.
like in relationship or anything like that. So I think just that duality of life is
Yes.
so important.
Yes. Yes. Which is why it's the worst but best, right? It's like
Mhm.
it's a double-edged sword. And I would say everything you said, like ditto, like 1,000%. And I would say the one thing that has come out of this is I didn't know how resilient I was. Like, I didn't know that this person was inside of me. And like, I think I did. Like, that's a lie. I think I did. And I know I did. Like you said, you like lost it for a while, and relationships and marriage and being a parent, like all the different things, it just takes a toll on you. But I won't ever take away that sense of like fuck yeah, I did that. Like, holy shit, I can't believe I did that. Like, I can't
Mhm.
believe that I handled, like I said, the taxes and the, like, oh my gosh, like, and that resiliency of like finding yourself again in a different way than before. And it is a double-edged sword because we wish this hadn't happened. But at the same time, it's you're getting to live for both of you almost. And you're getting to find that resiliency within your own life and within yourself. And hands down, I feel stronger and more brave and resilient than I ever imagined I could in my entire life. And while it came out of grief, I agree with you. It is so important to hear that. And for others who are struggling to hear that. And for anyone who's lost a family member or a child or a spouse or a grandparent, like anything, grief is grief and you can get through it. And um, it is okay to feel your feelings, but it's also okay to share your wins and show that to your children as well. And that duality is so important to mention. And yeah, I appreciate you sharing all of this. And it's been so wonderful to have you on. And thank you for being so open, vulnerable, and sharing. I know that's not easy, but I hope that this will help a lot of moms and dads and anyone who's listening to be able to know that it's okay to talk about and it's okay to have highs and lows and all the in between. And all of our stories matter, like all of them matter in all of the different ways. And yeah, I guess that's it. And until next time, XOXO, Dr. B.